the whole thing is so simple that sometimes we miss it. We know that God created man. So obviously, in our term, we cannot have a claim against our Creator, which is God. Men created a constitution, which is a contract. They made sure that that contract would not backfire to them. So basically, they made sure that the Constitution will create a government, giving them a limited power to serve them, the people. So obviously, the way that it was set up, the government cannot go on top of the people. And government created corporations. Now, today, it's really strange. This is the natural law, and somehow we look to ourselves and we say that, well, the government is above us. What happened? It's impossible. Well, it's very simple. This was planned a long time ago. This is not something that it happened just now. It goes back to 1862. However, it was so cleverly done that all these licenses that people they need it because they're U.S. citizens. They don't need it because they're American citizens. Before the 14th Amendment, no one needed any license to do anything. We started getting licenses. What is a license? It's a permission from someone to do something. Otherwise, it's illegal. Well, to get married, you need a license, I guess, marriage certificate. What's illegal about marriage that you need a permission, otherwise it's illegal? It doesn't make sense. Driver's license. It's illegal to drive on public roads unless you have a permission. It doesn't make sense. And all the licenses, it doesn't make sense. However, you need to have a license as a U.S. person. The whole thing started in 1862. Before coming that, I'm going to just tell you the definition of the law. I'm going to have to read it because it's so difficult. I want you to know about it. Do not injure any humans, person, property, or rights. That's all you have to know about natural law. If you know this one sentence, you're not going to be doing anything against the law, natural law. However, the judge tells you today that ignorance of the law is no excuse. What is talking about? No, we understand this sentence, but what is talking about? The last time that I checked with the Library of Congress, there are over 3 million law books with over 60 million statutes. When the judge tells you that ignorance of the law is no excuse, 80 million statutes, 60 million statutes, I'm supposed to know not to violate one of them? It doesn't make sense. However, the law is very precise, very clear. Not for U.S. citizens, though. That's for American citizens. As a U.S. citizens, you are under all these statutes. Everything applies to you. All the rules, regulations, the licenses, everything. So how we got in this mess to start with? Well, it started when the government, the Congress, the 40th Congress, in 1862, I think it's 1862. Just check on that. I'm sorry, 1868. 1868, they created what is called the 14th Amendment. It was sold to the American people as the end of the slavery for the colored black people. Well, it wasn't black people because it made slavery for everyone. However, once they created the 14th Amendment, now they established the corporate United States, not incorporated yet. 3 years later, Washington, D.C. became incorporated, which is the United States Corporation. Now, so far, American citizens, they're not realizing what's happening. Everything is normal business. So they just start gradually, they start setting up the stage. Then it became 1913, when the Federal Reserve Act passed. Congress lost the power to print a coin, and we gave it to the international bankers. And the excuse was, we're going to take it out of the politicians' hands, we're going to give it to the experts, Rothschild, in the banking business for so many hundreds of years. Okay. Well, when we started borrowing our money, we started paying interest. However, the deal was we were supposed to pay with gold and silver. They don't want to get it in Federal Reserve notes. 1913 to 1933, there were ships sailing from the West Coast all the way to Europe, full of gold and silver paying interest. By 1933, there was no more gold or silver left. So they had to file a bankruptcy. But who's filing a bankruptcy? The government, Congress. Once the bankruptcy was filed, then obviously the Federal Reserve wanted a collateral to extend credit. At that time, they created, of course, the IRS. They put all the U.S. citizens in the bankruptcy as a collateral for the national debt. So basically your labor from 18 years old till 65, it's pledged to pay the national debt, which is not even yours. It's the government's debt. And that's why they created the IRS. Now, this is all statutes. This is all based on U.S. citizen. One of the essential things of creating or putting all the children in this big corporation was the birth certificate. In 1921, there was a Maternity Act which passed. And basically it was for the protection of the mothers. However, basically it's created an entity that mothers, they can register their children and get a certificate. That's the birth certificate. Anytime that you get a certificate, guess what? You surrender title, you get a permission. It doesn't matter in this country what you own. It matters who controls it, who has a security interest. The same thing we do it with cars, the same thing we do it with the houses when we recorded the county recorder, the DMV, when we file it, the car with the DMV, we get a certificate. A certificate is not ownership. It's a proof that the owner giving you a permission. Otherwise, it's illegal. So you surrender it, and it's a voluntary compliance, by the way. You surrender it. Once you surrender it, it becomes a irrevocable contract. So now you don't own it. That's why you have to pay property tax. You have to pay taxes, income taxes. You have to pay all kinds of taxes. So we are in the system. I don't care all this organization. And I've heard for the last 10 years, a lot of people, they talk about constitutional rights. They go to the courts. As soon as they start talking about Bill of Rights, Constitution, the judge will shut them down, and he's going to say, well, if you start talking about Constitution in my court, I'm going to put you in jail. And you wonder, how can it be? The President of the United States takes his oath to defend the Constitution. Now, this judge is telling me, if I talk about it, I go to jail in his court. What happened? Well, the court system, the whole court system is in treason. And I'll tell you why. First of all, you have to pinpoint your enemies. IRS is not your enemy. IRS are people like you and me with one exception. They don't have any ethics left. So they work for the IRS. But besides that, they're not your enemy. Your real enemy is the Bar Association, which is a British corporation. This is what is controlling the whole United States. The judge tells you, you cannot practice law without having a license. You know why? Because all the laws, they're copyrighted by British corporations and publishing companies out of Montreal. They write and they publish, and they're copyrighted. If you use them, you're violating a copyrighted material. You go to jail. Not because you're not an attorney. It has nothing to do with that. You need to have a permission, a copyright permission. Now, being a foreign corporation out of Britain, England, coming in the United States, taking over all the court system, and according to the setup of the court, if you have a judge, he has to be a neutral person, has nothing to do with the court or the case. The prosecutor the same way, the clerk of the court the same way, everyone is the same way, and the attorney. However, the attorney is the officer of the court. The judge and the prosecuting attorney, they're all attorneys. Well, they all belong to the Bar Association. Nice family running the show.